If you're thinking about moving to Houston, Texas, or the Houston Heights, then this video is for you. Today, we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of living in the Houston Heights and what it has to offer for residents here. So let's dig in. So today, I'm joined by Lori, one of our teammates here on the MOVEMETOTX team, who lives in the Greater Heights area. So I'm excited to dig in on what you like and don't like about living in the Heights. What's going on?
Yeah, well, I love the Heights area. I mean, there's so many things to get into it with it. So, Heights is amazing. I have lived here for going on maybe 6 years now. Went to University of Houston, and then once I graduated, just went straight to the Greater Heights area, and I haven't left since.
Haven't left, got sucked in. So you're from Houston, so you've lived in a lot of different neighborhoods. Why did you choose the Heights? Like post college or end of college kind of time frame? What drew you to that area?
So honestly, what drew me to the Heights area is what really that area has to offer. There's tons of places to visit. So, restaurants, shopping, and, just access to trails and things like that. So there's so many different things that the Greater Heights area, allows you to do in that area.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and so like being from Houston, I'm sure, and living there for 5-6 years, like I'm sure you've seen a lot of growth. It's interesting to me because I feel like every time I go to the Heights and I drive down a different street, there's either like road construction or building going up or something that like a shopping center I didn't notice before. Have you noticed that in the 5+ years that you've lived there, as far as like construction and growth and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. So that's kind of like, the pros and cons of the Greater Heights area, especially right now. So there's tons of road construction, on like the two major roads over there where they are, there's complete road construction, but they are expanding the road and also adding in bike lanes, which, that's also great as well because it makes that area way more walkable than it was previously. And then some other great things that are happening are, they are adding in way more restaurants and, little shopping strips. So it's nice to see like more local restaurants and stuff like that pop up.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so let's get into the things and go a little bit more in depth on the things that you love about living in the Heights. So I think one of the first things that people always talk about is the location. And so what are some things as far as being like in that northwest part of the loop and of 610 that are good that you like about living up there?
Yeah, so I would say I'm a little bit unique about what I like, but honestly, it's the proximity to all the major highways. Houston, we have terrible traffic. So being able to get on, any highway super quickly is amazing. So honestly, being so close to the highway,
that's not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously where I live down on the southwest-ish side, it's like same thing, right? I can hop on 59 and 45 and 610 very easily. So like being on the northwest side, being able to get on 610, 290, 45 and 59 all pretty easily is definitely great, especially if you're a commuter. And so obviously like being in real estate, like we're driving around to different areas of town and stuff like that. So being close to the highways, while not everyone thinks about that, is definitely helpful with commuting and, getting around town. Mm-hmm. As far as food goes, you mentioned earlier about having, a lot of different restaurants to choose from. I think there's a ton of diverse food and there's always stuff that's popping up. What are some of your favorite spots in the Heights to go get a bite to eat?
Oh, that's really hard to nail down, but I really like Loro. That's over there. Really like quick, small bites, but it's also, you can order a bunch and share with all your friends. I love a good burger, so burger joint's pretty good. And, classic Mexican food with a margarita, going to Super Rica. Those are probably the best ones to hit up.
Yeah, for sure. So Loro is off of 11th Street, a little bit lower in the Heights, kind of Heights proper area. And so it's like an Asian / barbecue restaurant. And I love it as well, just because the small plates are awesome, where you can get a lot of different stuff. Burger joints off of Shepherd and like 20th Street or so. There's a few different locations throughout Houston, so great to get a quick bite to eat. And then across the parking lot is the taco joint. I think it's taco stand. Burger joint and taco stands, and they're owned by the same people. So depending on what your group is interested in, there's a lot there. And then what was your last one you said? Oh, Super Rica. Yeah, good Mexican, and always down to get a good margarita with my meal. So love that. There's so much good food. One of my favorites in the Heights is Handy's. One of the two Handy's Duozo is off of White Oak. So that's kind of like one of the main drags in the Heights. And they do the hand sushi rolls. And so that's top or high on my list as far as sushi goes. But it's a super small restaurant. So, you've got to generally make a reservation. You can't just kind of walk in, because they do all counter service and it's all seated. So you gotta plan ahead for that one. Outside of food, I think another thing that a lot of people like about living in the Heights is the shopping, right? And so that there's a lot to do as far as like farmers markets, and there's now a ton of different shopping, whether it's like the Mercantile or MKT or 19th Street. Do you go to stuff like that frequently?
Yes. I probably shouldn't go as often, but I do love a good shopping spree. So one of my favorite ones to go to is the new MKT, just because it's a mix of food and shopping. So I like to go over there. And then the Heights Mercantile, it's kind of like a farmer's market that happens twice a month over off of 11th Street. So very popular farmer's market. It's kind of like a big outing that the Heights area will do, twice a month. And a lot of people come out and, support local businesses and stuff like that. So it's really, it's a good one to go to.
One cool thing too is like a lot of those areas have like just what you said, like farmers markets, but then a lot of like the bars and breweries and stuff like that have different markets and events and festival type things. So it's a really cool opportunity to be able to get out in the community as well for different events. I know that, I've gone to a few where it's just like kind of pop-up markets or shops that they do, in the larger parking lots, or they'll sometimes shut down the street, which kind of leads me to another thing where they shut down the streets, which is White Linen Night, and then Lights in the Heights, which I think are two really fun activities and kind of, I wouldn't say festivals, but like street, I don't know how to describe it, but like street parties, block parties. Yeah, it's kind of like a street party, I would say, especially White Linen Night. I mean, the Heights shuts down essentially for White Linen Night, but it's always, something that I personally look forward to every year. It's a great time, to go out and hang out with all your friends, but then also, support all the other local bars and stuff in that area. So if you're not familiar, White Linen Night happens every year in August, and it's normally like the first weekend of August, and they shut down basically like 19th Street, which is one of the main streets in the Heights, and all of the bars and restaurants and shops have different specials. Everyone's wearing all white, or almost everyone's wearing all white, and it's just a really good time. I believe in the areas where the streets are shut down, there's like no open container rules or laws, and they allow everyone to just kind of walk from shop to shop and bar to bar, which is not normally allowed, right? And it's just like they have like food and drink specials, live music, games. I know this past year they started charging for it, so I don't know. Did you hear any? I heard some uproar about that. Did any of your friends not go because of that?
It didn't really hinder that many people, I would say. I believe it was only like $5, which, kind of not that much right there. But the only hindrance to some people is that, it happens in August. It's still pretty dang hot in Houston. So that's
so hot.
Only hindrance, because it's pretty much a whole outdoor event. So
yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah. And then Lights in the Heights happens in December. And that's basically kind of a part where more so Woodland Heights, but in the Heights, everyone will kind of go out and walk around and take a look at the lights, and less of a party than the White Linen Night, but it's definitely, a lot of the different bars will have events, and then there's like a route where everyone will kind of walk and check out lights, and it's really just an excuse to kind of get out with your neighbors and friends and drink and look at lights and, celebrate the holidays.
Yeah, that one's a fun one, just because it's kind of brings the Christmas feel to Houston, because it doesn't get cold here at all. So sometimes it just never feels like the holidays. So that's kind of like one of the only events that kind of brings the Christmassy feel.
Yeah, for sure. Drink some eggnog and it's like 85 degrees out.
Delicious.
So should be fine. So yeah, as far as shopping goes, you mentioned MKT, which I think is probably the kind of premier shopping area right now, because there's just so many different bars and restaurants and boutiques and different things that you can do. I know that they also do a lot of different festival type things, whether it's cultural or, just that they have everyone have some sort of special on a night kind of thing. But that's a lot to do over there. And then same thing with Mercantile. So there's definitely a lot that's happening. And then if you're looking for funkier shopping, that's when you would go to 19th Street, because there's definitely boutiques and antique shops and art and a lot of different fun stuff. So once you've eaten a ton, spent all of your money, and you've shopped and spent all your money, what's left is normally like fitness, right? And so one thing that I like is there's a ton of different like fitness studios. So depending on if you're like into yoga or weightlifting or CrossFit, like there are so many different gyms that you can go to. But if you spend all of your money, the trails are also great too. So what are some of your favorite places to like walk or jog or kind of explore the outdoors?
Yeah, so I personally like going on the White Oak Bayou Trail, just because it's, I don't know, I like that you're kind of not super close to all the roads and stuff like that. And then I also like the one that's off of Nichols Street. There's just like a small walk path along that road as well. Being in real estate, I enjoy looking at houses, weird enough. And so that trail allows you just to like kind of walk through the neighborhood and, take a look at, all the beautiful homes and stuff that are over there.
Insider tip on the Nichols Trail. But yeah, the White Oak Bayou is definitely one of the more popular ones. I would say, obviously if you're thinking a little bit more northwest, the TC Jester along the bayou. And then obviously the Heights hike and bike trail. So depending on where you are in the Heights, the hike and bike trail basically goes throughout the Heights into downtown. What's cool about a lot of the bayou trails is like they're all connected. So eventually you move from one to another. So maybe not for running unless you're like a long distance runner, but on a bike or some sort of wheels, right? Roller blades or something. You can get, all the way from downtown into the Heights on the different trails. So it's definitely interesting. And especially on the weekends, like there's so many people that are out, walking their dogs or running their children around to tire them out, or, going on a run or a jog or whatever.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that, like, if you're training for a marathon or something like that, that's the route people will take. They'll start in the Heights and then end up all the way in downtown, and, they just do that whole loop. So if you're training, that's where to go.
Yeah, and then, go ahead.
I said I will not be.
Yeah, for sure. But no, I love that for them. It's great. And, there's a lot to do. The other thing too, if you're looking for it, are parks. And so, if you have like kids, there are a lot of parks like Donovan Park off of Heights Boulevard. That's actually right across the street from Mercantile. And so that's a park that's like gated and has playgrounds and stuff. And then there's a lot of other smaller parks. And then there's one that's good that's up in near TC Jester in like the Timber Grove area. And the name is escaping me right now. So the other park that I like to is the Lorraine Cherry Nature Preserve off of 11th Street. And so that's like 11th Street and TC Jester area. So that's in the Lazy Brook Timber Grove area. And that's another good one just to like, you can walk around it. And then obviously you're close to Memorial Park, which is one of the biggest parks we have here in Houston, with the running trail and, you know, playgrounds and baseball fields and stuff like that. So we've talked a lot about the development in the Heights. I also think that there's a lot of character. What do you think about some of the, you know, older homes and buildings in the Heights?
Yeah, so the older homes are definitely one of my favorite parts about the Heights. There are some really unique homes that have been restored. You know, a lot of the streets in the Heights do have, you know, a historic designation to them. So, and it really just maintains, like, you know, the charm of what the Heights is. So yeah, there's definitely some really cool homes, you know, that you look at in this area.
Yeah, so it's definitely something to consider. You know, basically the lower portion of the Heights does have some historic district. So, you know, if you're purchasing a home that's in the, you know, Heights West, East, or South district, you could potentially not be able to make, you know, additions to the house, or you'd have to get things approved. So that's something to consider when you're looking in like the 11th to 17th ish street areas, as well as like on east and west of Heights Boulevard. So just something to consider if you're looking at older homes in the area. All right, so you've painted this picture, Lori, about how wonderful it is to live in your neighborhood and in the area. But obviously with growth and with, you know, a lot of people living in an area, sometimes there's things that you don't like. You know, one of the things that you said is like, there's been a lot of growth and that there is, you're close to a lot of highways. But one thing that I always seem to notice is like, there's always a lot of construction going on in the Heights.
Yep, that is true. And, you know, a lot of that is because so many people are moving into the Heights. So obviously to keep up with that demand, they have to, you know, make improvements to the infrastructure or add more apartments, and, you know, increase living. So that's kind of like the downside. And yeah, tends to be a lot of traffic, especially during rush hours. So that's kind of one of the main things about the Heights.
Yeah. The other thing I think is it is definitely like a car dependent kind of area of town. You know, so I think that if you live there, you probably need a car. But on the flip side, like parking, like if when I come in to the Heights to go to dinner or to go out or to do something like that, like parking isn't great.
Yeah. Yep, that is true. So very car dependent area. You know, it is walkable in some areas, but overall, you know, it's kind of hard to live in this area if you don't have one. And yeah, parking is an issue sometimes, especially during, you know, the weekend or, you know, dinner times. Not many parking garages. So, you know, the best option is to Uber if also, you know, if you plan to go out. You know, they will easily tow you as well. Been a victim of that. So
despite living there, driving across the neighborhood. Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously if you don't live in the Heights and you're going out in the Heights, I would just Uber and kind of get to whatever kind of section or district of the Heights you want to be in, because there's a lot of different areas where it's like there's a ton of bars and restaurants. If you go to dinner and then go grab a few drinks, you know, you don't necessarily need to, you can walk once you're there kind of thing, right? If you're off of White Oak or if you're at MKT. You know, I think that like if you're looking to move to the Heights, especially between like the 20th streets down to, you know, White Oak, 6th Street and White Oak, pay attention to the street parking because some of it is permitted, right? So you can get tickets or tags, right? So that you can have guest parking on the streets. But then some of it is just like super strict on when you can and can't park there. And so there's a lot of like no parking times and zones and areas to obviously help with traffic. But, you know, if you are having people over or if you're, you know, going to have people over, you should probably just pay attention to the street parking situation in where you may want to buy.
Yes, that's a great point, especially because a lot of these townhouse communities, they may not have a guest parking spot. So, you kind of have to keep that in mind if you like to host. You'll probably want to look around and see, where parking is available, for your guests.
Or just tell them to Uber.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say that always concerns me about the Heights, especially at nighttime, is the culverts, like the drainage in the Heights.
And
so on the sides of the roads in the Heights, there are basically these ditches, and they're there for drainage, right, in order to ensure that the streets don't flood. But if you're driving on the road, sometimes it's like, the side of the road is there and then it's a ditch. So it's always something to be cognizant of, because you could drive your car into a ditch. I know sometimes on a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning, if I'm in the Heights, grabbing coffee or doing something with a friend or whatever it may be, like you see some cars that maybe weren't aware of that and drove into that late night. So just something to keep in mind is the culverts, the drainage in the Heights. That always makes me nervous, and I don't love it, because in some of the parts of the Heights, the streets aren't wide and you have lots of ditches. So
yeah, it happens. I've seen it.
All right. Anything else as far as like amenities or anything like that you feel like is could use improvement in the Heights?
So I lived here for a while now, and one thing I think could, use improvement on are, better or more grocery stores.
Where do you normally shop at?
So where I normally shop at, and really what I feel like is kind of the main option right now, is HEB. It's a newer HEB, and it's large and stuff like that. But the only thing is that a lot of people go to that HEB, and limited parking, and it can get insanely busy.
So you're talking about the HEB that's off of like 22nd?
Mm-hmm.
The newer
Sure.
one?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very nice store, but it's one where like you pull into the garage and then, so it's like kind of confusing because I don't go there frequently. So when I do, it's like kind of confusing. But it is always a cluster. Like I'll go at, noon on a Tuesday, or I'll go, I don't go on the weekends, right? But like I'll go at random times and it's still like very busy. Do you ever go to the Kroger down off of like 11th?
I've been once or twice, but I don't love it. I feel, it's a little outdated. I'm big on cooking, and so I feel like, the produce and, the meat market's not always like the best options. So would like to see improvements over in Kroger.
Yeah. All right. So you've got the Kroger off of 11th. You've got the HEB up off Shepherd and like the 20th, 22nd-ish streets. And then the only other grocery store in the Heights, like big name grocery store, is like the Whole Foods. I don't know if it's still a Whole Foods 360, but like the Whole Foods up off of Yale and 610.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say the Whole Foods is like okay, but it's not a full-size Whole Foods.
Yeah. So I definitely go to that Whole Foods a lot just because it's so convenient and quick for me to get to, especially if I need like one or two ingredients. But yes, it's not a full Whole Foods. So, you're kind of stuck with limited options. And it can be a little pricey for that Whole Foods that I've noticed.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I'm like, sometimes I just want like chemical cleaning supplies. I don't want like a vinegar based like, cleaning supply. So Whole Foods has all this organic stuff and that's great. But, sometimes I just want some bleach or something. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. All right. Well, I appreciate you digging into the things that you like and don't like about living in the Heights. All right. Anything else you think we didn't include?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, want to talk about flooding or? Okay. I mean, you talked about the culverts, so.
I hate them. I hate them so much.
Yeah. No. I definitely see people drive into them all the time. It's definitely entertaining when they do. So.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Coming soon to a video near you.
Okay. Goodbye.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If you have any questions about living in the Heights or the Greater Heights area, please don't hesitate to reach out. Our team helps people move into and around the Greater Houston area, and we'd love to schedule a discovery call with you to chat about your real estate needs. We'll talk to you soon.